Thanks for joining us today for Think Big with Michael Zellner. My guest today for episode 158 is Kelly English. Kelly is executive chef and owner of Restaurant Iris and the Second Line in Memphis, and executive chef of Magnolia House in Biloxi, Mississippi. He is originally from New Orleans and went to college at Ole Miss, where he paid his way through school working in local kitchens in the Oxford area. He graduated from the Culinary Institute of America in 2004 at the top of his class. And in 2009, he was named the best new chef by Food and Wine magazine. Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Michael. How are you, brother?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure to have you on. I know we've tried to hook up a few times over the last year or so, and I had a few things happen and got in the way, so I appreciate your patience with me.
Well, here we are today. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Me too. I'm glad you're here. Before we get started today, I want to thank our two sponsors for the show. The first one is Buckley's Grill. It is owned by a couple of friends of mine, Jeff Fiorinelli and Ken Dick. It's been around for about, close to 30 years now. And when you go into Buckley's, you're greeted with a really friendly staff. The food there is great. The steaks are wonderful. And I cannot highly recommend enough the cream spinach. It is just out of this world there. So it's located on Poplar Avenue in Memphis, right near Estate, so Buckley's Grill. Also, Sleepy Z's Masonry. They serve the entire Memphis area in the Mid-South, including West Tennessee, North Mississippi, and Eastern Arkansas. They're a member of the Better Business Bureau of the Mid-South, the West Tennessee Home Builders Association, and the Mason Contractors Association of America. Whether you need brickwork, stone, cinder block, or concrete, Sleepy Z's Masonry can take care of all your needs, whether it's a small job of just one brick needing replaced or a large job of bricking or putting up stone on an entire house, and more. Sleepy Z's Masonry, where you'll rest easy while we're on the job. Kelly, I mentioned you're from New Orleans. I have some really great memories of New Orleans, and then I have some times where I don't remember anything.
I was about to say, in my for sure.
Exactly, of Bourbon Street, back in the day, especially when I went down there. There used to be a place here in Memphis called the Blue Light Studios on Main Street, that you could go and get an ID made. And they never asked for a driver's license. And this is back when in New Orleans, it was 18 to drink. And me and buddies went down, of course, and got our IDs made. And so we were in New Orleans frequently back in the day with those IDs. And they worked in New Orleans. They wouldn't work in Memphis because everybody here knew. But they worked in New Orleans. I was in high school in New Orleans. We go to this place called Checks Cashed. And you could get this. We all had IDs with like names of our high school teachers on that we would use, but New Orleans never cared. Exactly right. What are a few of the things that you remember from your childhood that stick out in your mind today that still make you smile when you think about them from your time there?
One thing I loved about when I look back on growing up in New Orleans is. New Orleans is a lot like Memphis in that it's a very diverse city, and but I feel like I grew up in a place where I wasn't sheltered. It's almost impossible to be sheltered in New Orleans unless you live on the very outskirts of it, which I didn't. I grew up in an area called the Lakefront, and one thing that I'm very thankful for is. I lived about a mile away from the UNO Lakefront Arena, which is where all of the bands would come play their big shows. So I got to see Nirvana twice. I started going to concerts when I was 12. Well, and the cool thing about New Orleans is you just start doing things young. I grew up in a bar, basically. Second Line is the representation of the bars that I grew up in. And, New Orleans is just there's only one New Orleans. There's only one Memphis too. But there's so many cultures that are represented in New Orleans. I feel very fortunate to have been brought up in it.
I cannot tell you how jealous I am that you saw Nirvana twice.
Nirvana twice. I saw Pearl Jam. I saw Pearl Jam with the Ramones. I'm trying to think. Everyone that came through, I would go see.
Yeah, I remember when Smells Like Teen Spirit came on the radio when I heard it for the first time. I was like, oh my God, that song was so good. And then there you go, started with grunge and it took off from there. And then all those rock bands are like, uh-oh. Yeah.
Yep. I was a child of grunge for sure. I graduated high school in 96. So 92, I was a freshman when all that stuff started really happening. And yeah, I had some Doc Martens for sure. Yeah.
Those had to be some fun times.
They were.
What led you to choose going to school at the University of Mississippi, where, by the way, you were recognized in 2013 with a Thomas A. Crow Outstanding Alumnus Award by the School of Applied Sciences? Why'd you decide to go there?
So my junior year of high school, my family moved to Baton Rouge. And had we not done that, there's no doubt I would have stayed in the state and I would have gone to LSU. Moving when you're a junior in high school is really difficult. Sure. And I, when I moved to Baton Rouge, I went from a place like New Orleans to a high school that was very cliquey. And, it was not an easy transition. And it was when it came time for me to decide where I wanted to go, I wanted to leave. There were moments where, kids are kids, but I think that adults that, especially adults that have become successful in whatever way you define that as in their profession, I think it's important that they talk about the fact that they were bullied when they were in high school, and I was certainly when I first started high school in Baton Rouge. A couple of guys asked me if I wanted to go to the LSU football game. They told me where to meet them and what time. And I went to my parents' house and I bargained with them and I got their car. I didn't want to get dropped off. I wanted to drive myself. And I got there early and I went and I sat there waiting for everybody to show up. And about, 20 minutes after halftime, I realized that the joke was on me. And I walked back to that car and I cried my eyes out. I was so hurt, but I didn't want my parents to know how hurt I was. So I got it all out, and then I got home, and they said, "How was it?" I said, "Well, we had such a good time." And but I guess the reason I'm telling you this right now is for any kids that may watch it that go through hard moments. Like, it's going to be all right. I promise you, it's going to be all right.
Absolutely. I got bullied, and it was mostly by friends of mine. Sure. That used to just hit me in the arms. I was in ninth grade and 10th grade. I was like 5'3", 5'4". I didn't have a growth spurt till about 11th grade. I shot up to close to 6 feet, thankfully, and they left me alone. But yeah, I remember having bruises. I would lift up my shirt. You couldn't see them, but when you lift up and take your shirt off, I would have 10, 15 bruises on each arm. And I remember my mom, asking me where did those come from and everything. And I never told her. They were friends that, I knew because she knew their parents. And I was like, oh no, and she'll go talk to them and it'll be even more embarrassing. So I sort of just took it. And then I remember in the end of 10th grade, I took, maybe 4 months of karate when Kang Ree taught here. And enough just to be able to do a couple of front kicks.
Sure. Yeah, there you go.
And then
I finally, the right place will end it all.
Yeah, and I kicked one of the guys really hard in the stomach when he hit me in a poker game, and then everybody left me alone. But you're right, bullying, it sucks, and you're right, it will be okay, because just like you, I was okay too. Absolutely. Yep. You said, quote, "I started as a busboy and catfish filleter. It's funny, when I think about what turned me on to cooking, it was the idea that through work I can make people smile. And that is the same thing that gets me going today," unquote. We're now 10 years later from when you said those words, Kelly. And, I take it making people smile with some amazing food still motivates you today.
100%. I mean, if you stack up the hard things about the business that I've chosen and the profession that I've chosen, with the idea that people come here to make memories. In the hardest of days when you're understaffed or you're tired, you're working your 15th day in a row or 38th day in a row, whatever it may be. You never lose sight of the fact that people are choosing to come to your place to make memories. And I run into people that say, oh, we had our first anniversary at the old Iris and I'll never forget it. And, that's to me, that's really powerful. It's when I look back at the year that we had in 2020, that we all had, that was really what was one of the most difficult things is we lost the opportunity to give people enjoyment, which is really one of the few. I mean, let's be honest, you work long hours. The hours we work the hardest are when most people are at rest, when everybody else is off. So we're going to work nights and weekends. We miss so much time with people we love. And what we trade for that is making people happy. And it was very difficult to do that in a remote way. We got really creative in our business, in our restaurants, and how we handled the pandemic. And I'm really proud of the way we did. But that was tough to miss that.
What did y'all do? Were you able to still get food to people?
Oh, yeah. So what we did is we decided that we were not going to try to compete with everybody else. So we saw a lot of our colleagues try to do hot takeout and try to operate as close to normal restauranting as they could. And what we did was we started doing delivered cold family meals that people could reheat at home. And so we could touch people in West Memphis, Arkansas, and we could get people, food to Lakeland. We went everywhere. But I think one of the coolest things that we did was we had a weekly virtual wine dinner series with Joe's Liquors, which is in Midtown, right down the street from Second Line and the Swamp Bar. And we would get a winemaker on Zoom. We would prepare a 3-course meal with one of those courses broken apart so people could have a cooking demonstration so they could learn a little bit. Everybody had to learn how to cook all of a sudden. Sure. And so they would get a cooking demonstration from me, and then the rest of the food would just be ready to heat up. You'd have Cisco talking about wine pairings with the winemaker. And what was really cool about it, we could do about 50 people or 100 people, so 50 couples at a time. And what we found was we were finding a small space where it felt like people were at a restaurant again, to us, to them. And we built this little community of people that did this every week, and it was their way of connecting with people. The one thing that I do miss about the pandemic, there's 2 things that I miss. One is there was almost a sense of patriotism. It's the best way I can describe it, in the way that people supported small businesses and restaurants specifically. But it was intentional, and they were aggressive with the way that they tried to support the restaurants they cared about. The other thing on a personal level that I miss about the pandemic, it was the only time as a restaurateur, as a small business owner, that I've ever felt permission to fail. In the restaurant world, it's one dish at a time, and everybody's got an opinion on it, and everybody should have an opinion on it.
Sure.
But the grace that was bestowed on us during that time is something that I haven't experienced. And whether we were talking about someone not enjoying what they ate, or if our business went completely belly up, I felt like we had permission to do that. And I think that's part of the reason that we got to get so outside the box and reckless with the way that we tried to save the jobs that we saved, and the ones that we didn't save that we brought back.
What an amazing idea that was, the virtual thing. That was so cool. I would have loved to see that. That's cool.
I remember calling Cisco, who's the GM at Joe's, and saying, "Hey, I got this idea. I want to do this. What do you think? I think we can sell some wine. I can sell some food all at the same time. People can come pick it up." He was like, "Great. How often do you want to do it?" And I was like, "Every week." He was like, "Every week?" And I was like, "Yeah, every week." And we did it. I think we did something like 50 of them in a row. We did them even when the world started to come back together, until people started really telling us that we're done with Zoom. We don't
Right.
Zoom is work now. We don't want to Zoom while we eat. So
Yeah. Imagine owning Zoom when that happened.
Man.
Yeah.
Ooh,
I know.
Talk about it.
Exactly. I'm sure you learned a lot from him, but there's a time when that ends and then you begin. And it took a lot of, a ton of desire and guts to decide you're going to go out on your own and do this yourself. Overall, how would you describe your culinary philosophy or your approach to cooking?
Well, I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think when I got to Memphis, I wanted to have the best restaurant, no holds barred. I didn't care how it affected me, or or what it took. I was going to do that, and I was cooking with my head. And over the time, and I think Memphis did this to me, I've cooked more with my heart as time has gone along. And I pay so much more attention to why food is the way it is, more than the how or the what, than I ever thought I would. And coming to Memphis has done a lot of things for me. It's made me understand how much history books missed. So when you talk about, I think people think of me as a cook of Cajun or Creole lineage, which is true. But what I didn't realize, when I was growing up, even there, it was shoved down our throats that French, Spanish, everything was French or Spanish, French, Spanish. It's African. Everything that I cook is for the most part I'm cooking on the shoulders of Black cooks that blazed culinary trails that they don't get credit for, and I can easily describe like how that is. So you think about a gumbo, right?
Right.
Gumbo is the West African word for okra. And the reason we have okra in this country is because when people were stolen from their homes and brought here to be enslaved, they smuggled okra seeds in the braids of their hair to make sure that they had those ingredients with them when they got here. And we ended up with this soup that people will tell you is French or Spanish, but one of its main ingredients is okra, and it's named the West African word for that plant. When you think about Southern food, I think that if you were to poll a lot of people and say, what's the most Southern food? I think one of the things that would pop up the most are collard greens or any greens, turnip. Sure. They're delicious and they're soulful. But what's the inconvenient thing to talk about there is that the reason we have greens is because, and we're not talking about pork chops and turnips, is because, the people that own the plantations ate the pork chops and turnips, and they gave the foot of the pig and the leaves of the turnips to the people that were enslaved, and told them to figure it out. That's what stands the testament of time. Wow. Is that it's not the other. And you get to almost any culture, and we don't talk about the foods of kings and queens. We talk about the food of the peasants. Food of the peasants is what's really, outside of just a very few very unique cultural examples, we celebrate the food of peasants. And I've learned more from a pot about our history than I have from any history book that was ever assigned to me to read in a class.
I learned something really new right there. That's awesome. I never knew any of that.
Well, and to me, maybe I would have learned that had I stayed in New Orleans and cooked, but Memphis is really what showed me the way of what a lot of truths are, inconvenient or not.
Sure. What do you believe sets Southern cuisine apart from other regional cuisines in the United States?
Man, I think that we cook with method more than recipe. So we'll go right back to greens, and you ask anybody who cooks greens to tell you what their recipe is. They won't tell you amounts. They will give you a method. They will tell you how they do it, and when to put things in, but not. It's not this measured amount. It's about feeling, and Southern food is about feeling. It is, and to me, it's about understanding. It's about understanding where our food came from and how it came to be. I think it's a very exciting time to cook in the Southern United States.
Very cool. How do you stay creative and innovative in the kitchen, especially when you're developing new dishes?
One of the difficult things, and this is in any line of work, is that productivity and creativity are not friends. So, and that was one of the things that was so painful about the pandemic, was that we had to be intensely creative and intensely productive at the same time. And we came through it, but it's just very difficult. They're not friends. You can't go to an artist and say, hey, do 10 paintings, or go to a musician and be like, I need 10 original songs. Can you do that fast for me, please? Right. There's no pushing that rope. You got to figure out how to pull it. So it's difficult, but I think reading, I think eating, I think understanding the struggles that other cultures have gone through. Appropriation is a real thing. I know that if I were to put a bowl of pho on the menu at Iris, I could charge more than a lot of the restaurants on Cleveland Avenue, and by using the same ingredients. I think you've got to be very careful not to take someone's ability to earn a living from their own culture away from them. But I think there's a way to honor those cultures in little different touches that you put on food. And I can't think of any meal that I've really just truly enjoyed that I didn't say, man, I want to learn how to use an ingredient that way. I've never wanted to copy a dish, right. But and if ever I have copied a dish, then we will on the menus, say that it's a cover. Like, this is someone else's food.
That's great.
There's nothing wrong with a band covering a song, and so it's creativity is a thing that you can't rush, but I think that there are ways to rework classics. I think that Iris is a classic restaurant. I think when we first opened, it was viewed as not necessarily a classic restaurant, but that's, I think, honestly, because we brought a modern Creole restaurant to a town that did not have one yet. And so it felt like we were doing some new stuff. But in its heart, Iris has always been a very classic restaurant, reworking dishes to honor different people or to be presented in different ways. But most of my creativity starts with going back to a cookbook that my dad and his sisters wrote when their mom died, my grandmother. And so that's where if I'm ever stuck and I'm not sure what I want to do, I just flip through that book. Sometimes what I end up with doesn't have anything to do with anything I read, but just kind of like thumbing through that will get my juices going again.
That's awesome. You said, quote, someone just sent back their order of alligator because they are a vegetarian. So that's a thing that has happened now on this planet, unquote. That's hilarious. Tell us a little bit about your reaction and what happened on that. Must have been a very interesting night.
When I was younger, I probably would have fired out of the kitchen to have not like a conversation with them, but we were so busy, and I've mellowed so much in the last 15 years that I didn't even go talk to the table. The server came back and they said they didn't want the alligator because they're a vegetarian. I said, oh, I can't even. But it's a weird business, and I'm not anti-vegetarian by any means. Almost every year for a month, but at least I haven't done it since the pandemic. But before the pandemic, every year for a month, I would go vegetarian to connect with our vegetarian guests. I value them very much. We always have a vegan dish on the menu at Iris, and most of our desserts. So I'm not a hater of vegetarians, but I do think it's pretty funny that someone didn't know that an alligator wasn't a plant.
Right.
I mean, come on.
I know.
Come on now.
Did you at least look out the kitchen door, like to maybe see who it was?
I like I'm saying, in years past, I'll tell you the funniest story I have of a strange guest interaction, and this was very early on when Iris just opened. This was 2009. And I was young, and I wanted Iris probably to be fancier than it was. And I wore long pressed white chef coats, and I wore this long white apron that almost touched the floor. I thought I was so fancy. And someone sent their steak back because it was overcooked, and it totally was. And what I do and I still do this, but what I do when that happens is I'll get a new one started, and I will bring the steak to the table. It lets me do a few things at the same time. I can apologize to that person. I can ask everybody else if they're enjoying everything, and I can thank them for coming and for the grace.
Sure.
So we cook this guy a new steak, and I bring it to the table, and I put it down in front of him, and I said, "I'm so sorry about that, sir. Is there anything else I can get you?" And he says, how in the F do you expect me to eat this without a knife? And I looked at this guy and I said, "Sir, I highly doubt that you would allow me to speak to you in your office that way. And I'm not going to allow you to speak to me in my office that way." And I walked over and I got a steak knife and I put it down next to him. And I just stood there for a second, and he looks at me and he says, "What do you want, an apology?" And I said, "No, sir, I don't need anything else from you. Is everybody else okay?" And they all said yes. And I turned around to walk to the kitchen. And this is where I made my mistake. I got so mad that I turned around and I went back to the table. Okay. So but I get to the table and I'm there and I'm standing there and I'm furious, but I don't have anything to say. So I'm just standing there and I'm mad. Okay. And he looks at me and he says, he didn't say anything. He just looked up at me and I said, "I just wanted you to know that I still don't need that apology." And I turned around and I walked off. And later on in the night, when they were leaving, he was talking to a server and he said, "Look, I want to tell you that you did a really good job, but that busboy needs an attitude adjustment." He was talking about me because our servers wore white shirts and white aprons. So,
oh my gosh,
whoever that was, I'm really sorry about that. But he thought I was a busboy, which I think is pretty funny. I was a kid.
Right.
I was 29 years old when we opened Iris. I'm very lucky that it all worked.
Right.
You add everything up that we did, there's no reason that you and I should be here talking right now. None.
Right.
None. I'm very lucky that I hired an amazing front of the house staff when we opened that had worked together before, that let me make mistakes. And we could make up for those mistakes I made in other ways, or buy us a little time for grace. But I am very thankful for the people that work in the front of the house and in the back of the house too. But I couldn't be in the front and the back at the same time. I could fully control that back of the house, but my service staff when we opened, I love everyone that I've ever gotten to work with, but that first crew that we had was a really, a pivotal crew in my life.
That's awesome. The guy didn't go online and leave a review or anything, did he?
2009 was just like right in the beginning of it. And, if you want me to be blunt, I think that most of our guests were of the age that they were not tech savvy at that moment.
Right.
So all I had to deal with him was word of mouth, but there was he wasn't going on Yelp.
That's good. Can you share a memorable experience or dish that showcases the essence of Memphis cuisine?
Of mine, or just in general?
Of yours.
Yeah, I think so. so we had a restaurant named Ponta that was a Catalan restaurant that opened where Iris was after we moved Iris out east, and it was my favorite restaurant probably we've ever had. We closed it. It just wasn't operating the way we needed to, and that's where the Swamp Bar is now. But there were these little fried things called bomba barcelonetas. And if you go to Barcelona, or if you want to say it correctly, Barcelona, if you go to Barcelona, the Catalans, they're very much their own thing. They're not Spanish. They're more Italian than Spanish. But they have these little potato dumplings that are filled with braised meat that are fried. And we did some of those at Ponta, but we filled them with Payne's barbecue. And to me, Memphis is collaborative. And, yes, we have a smoker here at Iris. We could have smoked our own stuff, but we really wanted to showcase another business that we were really proud to be peers with here in town. So it was really fun to be able to have a dish that brought in, something with as rich a history as Payne's barbecue.
What a great idea. I'm sure people loved it. I can imagine how good it is.
Oh, they were great. They were great.
Yeah. In your experience thus far, and like I said, you're still very young, what are some, key qualities that, or skills that every successful chef should have?
Well, every good chef needs to be a good teacher. You've got to be able to teach your team, what it is you want to get out of them. And, I think that every chef really needs to, this industry, I've referenced the pandemic several times, but this industry is a different industry than it was before the pandemic. And you've got to know when things are important. You got to keep the big thing. And, we made our reputation by being painstaking on every single detail. And I think that one of the things that, and I'm not good at this, that is important that people need to recognize if they want to get into this world is when to take a break. I said earlier that, one of the hard things is that we work when everybody else is at rest, and that gets difficult for the people that love you and the people that you love. And you've got to know when to do something for yourself. And I don't mean to make us sound too much like martyrs, but our business is about sacrificing yourself for other people. That's what we do. And so I would tell you to know when to take time for yourself and to recognize that you're never going to stop learning. Right. I think if you ever think that you've learned everything you're going to learn, it's time for you to do something different.
I agree wholeheartedly. Can you walk us through the process of creating, one of your signature dishes at either Restaurant Iris or the Second Line, from the concept, to plate, and keep in mind that I haven't eaten anything today, so I'm very hungry, but I sort of would like to know sort of like the concept, how you go through that.
Well, I'll tell you one of my favorite stories about any dish, and it's one of my favorite dishes that we've ever made. During the summer, we do this dish that is a grilled piece of amberjack with shrimp, and there's a tomato salad, and then we make this thing called a harissa cafe au lait, and we serve it in a coffee press, and we pour it tableside. But it's pasilla chilies and garlic, shallots and lime, cumin and coriander and shrimp stock and coconut milk. And what I set out to do was to make this Creole kind of pho that we could do tableside. And I tested the recipe, and it wasn't where I wanted it. And I tested it over and over and over and over and over again of where I wanted it. And finally, I added a few things in, some sugar, a little more salt, and then I added the lime zest, and I tasted it, and I was like, that's exactly what I want. And then I also realized that I just made Taco Bell hot sauce. It tastes just like Taco Bell hot sauce, and it does. And but it became one of our most popular dishes. This is the first time I've said that publicly, that Taco Bell hot sauce.
Did anybody else ever guess that, or no one?
No, but like, I've gotten the packet next to each other. It's totally Taco Bell hot sauce. Exact same flavor profile. It's really funny.
That is funny.
But I think that going back to what is the difference between something like appropriation and honoring our culture, I think that the difference between the two is that when you're honoring a culture, I think that you research and you read about and accept the struggles that bore that dish, and understand their perspective on what is complicated about how it came to be and what might be now. But that acceptance of that is very important.
Absolutely. Are there any unconditional ingredients or flavor combinations that you enjoy maybe experimenting with sometimes?
Well, I can tell you that there's a few flavors that, like, when you eat them together, you're like, oh, that's what God meant. Like when like balsamic vinegar and strawberries together, like God totally intended those things to go together. Sherry wine and mushrooms, oh my gosh, or tarragon mushrooms are just so good together. But I love tasting things all the way through the cooking process, from raw to halfway through, to really understand what's happening to them. And a weird thing that I like to eat is raw okra, like not like a plate of it, but like I'll have a bite of it. Right. Just so it makes me ponder like the things that you can do with it. It's amazing the things that we end up eating when they taste the way they taste when they're raw, because raw okra is not good. It's not good. It's a weird texture in your mouth. It's not something that people like, and I'm not saying I like it, but it's important to me to remind myself how things start a lot.
I'll have to try balsamic vinaigrette and strawberries. That sounds
not vinaigrette, just vinegar.
Just vinegar.
Sugar.
Okay.
Just cut up some strawberries, throw a little sugar in there, and a little splash of balsamic. Oh my gosh.
Okay. I'll make sure I get it right. Yeah, that sounds great. How do you balance regular life with work? Because I know you're extremely busy.
Not well.
Yeah.
It's one of my weakest points. I wish I could give you a better answer than that. I'll tell you that moving Iris from a 12-table restaurant to a 200-seat restaurant has been way more challenging than I anticipated. And I'm proud of where we are.
Sure.
But we opened Iris, a 5-night-a-week restaurant with 12 tables in it, and it is now a 7-night-a-week, seven lunch a week restaurant with 200 seats, and trying to keep up with the reputation that we started building and how we started doing it has been it's been draconian at moments. When we opened, and through the history of this restaurant, I've talked to everybody that came in, not because I need a pat on the back, because I'm truly, they came, and I want to say thank you. That was not difficult to do 5 days a week for 12 tables.
Right.
7 days a week, lunch and dinner, 200 seats. It's tough. It's tough. And so I will be the first person to tell you that I have not figured work-life balance out very well. I haven't.
I never came when you were, the 12th seat. I've been there a few times, as you know, out here in Laurelwood, but I did not know that. That is a humongous difference.
Oh yeah.
In every way.
Yeah. Well, and we did this very intentionally, and it wasn't just for myself and our business partners. We recognized, so the third day of the pandemic, we laid off 71 of our 78 employees. And what we realized was that our business model was awful. While it didn't seem awful, if that's the leeway we have before we've got to lay people off, then what we're doing doesn't work.
Right.
So we realized that we needed to do a few things different. That Iris, if it was going to continue, needed to move, and it needed to get into a bigger space. And Laurelwood, where we're now, does everything we needed to do. I think that we've made people's jobs better, made them more secure. We've done things in Midtown that make sense there. I think that I don't know that a white tablecloth restaurant that was at the price point that Iris is made sense in Midtown for much longer. Midtown was getting younger, and they just don't want that exact experience, I don't think, as much anymore. Now, I'm not talking about, look, I'm Midtown to the core, to my bones. I'm a Midtowner, so I'm not saying anything bad about Midtown. I'm just talking about rational decisions to make sure that our employees had the best ability to earn a living and the most job security that we could possibly give them. And we knew that something in that building that we own, I mean, we're not leaving Midtown by any means, made sense. It just wasn't that restaurant anymore.
That makes sense. I did not know about, you said Swamp Bar?
Swamp Bar, yep.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Swamp Bar is really cool, and I can't take too much credit for it. Dirk Meitzler and Sam Hill are the ones that are Sam in the front, Dirk in the back, are making that place go. But they've studied New Orleans East is a very specific part of New Orleans that's been heavily influenced by the Vietnamese culture, specifically for people that moved to that area to work in the seafood industry. And that New Orleans East culture has kind of meshed the things you think about New Orleans and ingredients from the Vietnamese culture, or vice versa, taking dishes that were very Vietnamese. A good example is yak mein, which is a dish also called Old Sober in New Orleans, that's got braised meat, shrimp, and ginger, and hot sauce, and Worcestershire, and it's like a ramen. It's like a Creole ramen. It's delicious. But that Swamp Bar is all about that New Orleans East neighborhood, and taking some of the things that really make sense in our company to put out there. Part of the reason that our Catalan restaurant, I kind of underestimated when we moved Iris, how well Iris and Second Line work next to each other and how well they play off of each other. And suddenly we had this restaurant that was a complete departure from anything that we had done before, sitting next to Second Line. Well, now with the Swamp Bar, those two restaurants really make sense next to each other.
That's awesome. What a great idea. Best New Chef in 2009 by Food and Wine magazine featured in Bon Appetit, Rachel Ray, Garden and Gun, and also listed by the Memphis Business Journal is top 40 under 40 in 2013. I've met you a few times in person while eating at Restaurant Iris with our mutual friend, the wonderful Greg Raber, who I cherish so much in my life. Has been so good to me. Despite all your success, you're very approachable. You walk around the restaurant like you talked about, talking to your guests, which is awesome, and I think makes a huge difference when the owner does that. What has kept you so grounded over the years?
Well, thank you. First off, it was very nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I never lose sight of the people that work for me, and how much they're depending on our ability to make good decisions. And I never lose sight of the fact that everybody has a choice on where they're going to eat, and there's so many good choices in this town.
Sure.
Like tons. And every time I walk out into that restaurant, no matter how many people in there, whether it's packed or whether it's not the busiest night, those people have chosen to come see us. And I'm very grateful to them for that. And so Yeah, I think that I'm just grateful. I'm just very grateful. I think that I look at all the people that I've worked with in my life that are so talented, and this business is it's a hard business.
Sure.
I mean, if you're doing things correctly, you're making 3 to 5% profit. It's a terrible investment,
Right.
If someone asked you to invest in something and that's what they told you, like, no, I can go passively make better money than that. I will never not grind for my team, and I will never not be grateful for the people that support us.
All of us, who have gone in business for ourselves, at some point in time, we get knocked back on our butt. We have failures, things that we try, and you mentioned, one, and that don't work as well as, we thought it would. Many times people who have never owned a business, and this isn't a knock on them because a lot of people don't understand, they only see the money coming in and they don't see all the money going out. You just mentioned about the profit margins that you have. And it's not very good if the second one is more than the first one. There's more going out than going in. And
right.
as I know too well, and one of the businesses I've had before, what is failure, or maybe things not going as well as you thought? What has it taught you about yourself and life in general?
Well, I'm going to go back to the pandemic again, but I would challenge you to find anyone in my position as a small business owner operator that didn't know exactly how close they were to being homeless during the pandemic. Exactly, like precisely. So I think that what I learned about myself, and when I look back on the ways we had to work for 6 months, I've talked to my business partners about it before. I don't know if I could do it again. Right? Like it was not for the faint of heart, and especially do you remember the beginning of the pandemic? Like, we had no answers, nothing.
Right.
It was so certain. Everyone shared that, no matter your view of whether it was legit, illegit, whatever. I don't even care anymore what people think.
Sure.
But we didn't know, and we were where we were. And so I think that I've learned that how far down I can dig. And I think I've learned how far down I will dig for my team. And I think that when that first hit, I thought that 2/3 of restaurants would be gone. I'm shocked. I'm still shocked that my peers. I'm very proud to be peers with the people that we have in this town that are doing the work that I do. How much we came together and traveled as one. It was really, it was something I'll never forget. And so, I guess what I took from that was just how far down I'll dig for myself, for other people, and how much the people that seem like competition, how much I rely on them, and some of them, how much we rely on each other to get through hard times.
Great answer, man. That's awesome. You said last year, referring to Restaurant Ira's, quote, "I am getting back to my roots. I'm really proud of the food we have been serving, but my responsibility is directly to my guests and by proxy to my staff. It's time for me to be serving my food," unquote. How much have you enjoyed being back in the kitchen and doing what you do best?
I really liked it. There was reopening Ira's was hard. It was hard, and there was a time that I think that I think that my company was doing too many things and none of them quite well enough for a minute. And I think we're very lucky to work in a company where people gave us a second chance, because we needed grace from some people after the first few months.
Right.
And I think we overcomplicated some things, and we got right back to our roots. And I've been happier, my team's been happier, our guests have been happier. It's definitely the right thing that we did, for sure.
Oh, great. For some of our audience that doesn't live in Memphis, could you maybe give a little synopsis of each of your restaurants and what you believe makes them, so special, where people want to continue coming back all the time?
Sure. So we got Iris, which is my baby. Iris is my baby, and Iris is a true modern take on a Creole restaurant. One that could exist in New Orleans, but happens to exist in Memphis. Second line is the bar I grew up in, and it's po' boys and cocktails, and probably the most me restaurant that we have. If you were to ask me which one is most indicative of who I am, it's second line, no doubt. I'm not as fancy and fussy as a lot of people think I am. Swamp Bar. Huh?
Go ahead.
Well, Swamp Bar is, like I said, it is a very small, specific representation of New Orleans East. And then we have Fino's, which is our Italian deli that we are simply the stewards of. It's a institution of Memphis that has operated for decades. And there's some new things we've done, but there's some things that we would never change about that place. But really, it's a ton of fun. It's a great sandwich. I love an Italian sandwich. Like when the sandwich came out, my two favorites are po' boys and Italian sandwiches. And I get to have restaurants that do both of those.
Yeah, I was about to say I love po' boys.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Right? Big drippy, like running down your arm. Don't know how you're going to put it down once you pick it up. Awesome.
Right. And yet, if you're on a date and you're going to eat a po' boy, number one, you want to make sure she has one too, because you're both going to you're like, all right, just don't worry about how we look. We're going to get messy. You
are going to know if you like each other.
Yes.
After that date, because it's a messy sandwich, man.
Yeah, I'm messy enough without it. So you add that in, 10 times worse. But yeah, they're so good. I know you're really involved in various charitable initiatives. Tell us a little bit more, if you would, about your community involvement and why it's so important to you.
Well, I think so. There's a few things we do. The one that's coming up soonest on June 8th. Every other year we host an event called Le Bon Appetit, which benefits Le Bonheur Children's Hospital. When I was a kid, I spent a few months in a hospital. I fell out of my grandmother's second-story window onto a concrete patio, and I broke basically the left side of my body. I shattered my left forearm. I broke my left arm, and I broke my left femur in two places. I ended up in a body cast. I still have limited use of my hand, my left hand. And I went to a hospital that was meant for adults, and I got fine care. But the things they do at Le Bonheur are breathtaking. It's one of the most inspiring places that I've ever been. And the work that they do is world class. And so we bring in chefs locally and from across the country to do an event that is once every other year. This year is going to be really fun because we're adding a late night component to it, where we will switch the stage, and it will become we'll have some restaurants that serve late night food there, along with some bars, and then we'll have a show from our friends at Unapologetic. I Make Mad Beats will do his thing, and the artist Francis Berry will paint the stage behind them, and it's going to be very cool. So I'm shameless plug, lebonappetit.org. Get your tickets. I'll see you all there. It's going to be a heck of a party. And the other big thing that we do every year is called Day of Warmth. And that is where we open our doors at the second line to our unhoused neighbors and give them a dignified meal. And we started doing it a few years before the pandemic, and it was just kind of on a whim. It was very cold, and we decided, hey, we're going to open our doors on January 1st to anybody that needs a warm meal. And we got flooded with people that were bringing coats, hats, and blankets, socks.
Oh, how awesome.
Oh, well, and so it's grown into this thing where we have city and county partners. MATA gives us a bus. They go and they pick up people at shelters, and they bring them there. Lebanon sends a nurse practitioner to give kids checkups. The fire department and the police department come to help make sure that people get to where they need to be. And so they come in and they sit down. They have a meal just like anybody else. They have a server. And they get to choose a few things that they'll order. And then low key, the most impactful part of the morning, a bunch of barbers organized by Nick Sacombe, who's a local barber here in town, set up out back, and everybody gets a haircut and they get a fresh start. And it's a real washing in the feet moment. Watching just the body language of someone and their posture before they get, squared up or trimmed. There are very few moments in their year where they get to tell somebody what they want, right, or how they want to look. Right. And, they lack many moments of comfort or of human touch. And watching people come out of their shells and then seeing themselves in the mirror after someone has cared for them is I can't think of anybody that's volunteered with us that hasn't shed tears watching some of the things that happened that day. It's my favorite thing that we get to do every year. I got goosebumps right now talking about it. I love our community, and I'm so proud of the town that I get to call my home.
When do you do that?
On January 1st every year.
January 1st, okay, every year. And when where is Bon Appetit? Is it at the restaurant? Is it Lebanon? Or?
No, it's at the Kent downtown. Okay. And, or is that uptown? It's near Mud Island at the Kent.
Yeah.
We usually have about 1,200 people as guests that night, and it's all for a great cause. LeBonAppetit.org. Go get tickets.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I interviewed and her name is completely Miss Williams that runs the Kent.
Yep.
I had her on my podcast like in the first 6 months I started it, and I had her son Dane on too. Yeah. So yeah, they're good people. And yeah, I got to see the Kent. I believe it was built by Billy Orgel.
Yeah, he's part of that group for sure.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, I actually got my first beeper from Billy Orgel. He started with his father over on Getwell in a big metal building in the late 80s. Beepers, and my dad had one of those Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell phones. My dad was a podiatrist, and I remember I got a car phone in my Chevy Impala, the one that was connected to the car. This is the late 80s. And my first bill was like $700 for 1 month. And my dad was like, you just spent more than what this car is worth in 1 month. We are taking that phone out of your car. But that's how Billy got started out back there.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. I mean, look, and then cell phone towers. Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
And and such a charitable guy too. So that's great.
Great guy.
Yeah.
Great.
You said, quote, "My heart goes out to Orange Mound right now. Some of my favorite people I've ever met are from there. Some work happening in Memphis originated from there. Some much more important work happened in Memphis originated from there. Some of my favorite small businesses are from there, and so many of my teammates live or were born there. Hoping for healing for those suffering immediate effects today, and for the fundamental change to directly affect our collective present and future. If you care about Memphis, you care about Orange Mound," unquote. Share with us a little bit more about this. You're talking, I'm sure, about the shootings that happened down there. How do you believe that food can be used as a tool for social change and bringing people and communities together?
Well, I think that food is something that is inherently shared. One of the first words we had for friendship or a friend was a companion. And if you break down that word companion in its Latin roots, means those who we break bread with. And so from the onset of the idea of people spending time together, it was around food, or it was around a table. Probably not a table, but food. And so, I think that anything that unifies can also divide. And I think that it's a very easy take to say that food will unite us. Well, part of the reason that we can use food as a unifier is because food historically has also been very divisive. And, so yes, that there was an awful day in Orange Mountain. I can think of, whether we're talking about Pop's Tamales, or whether we're talking about the guys from Unapologetic, whether we're talking about, I think 3 or 4 of my team members that live in Orange Mountain or were born there. The people that come out of Orange Mountain are beautiful people, and it breaks my heart to see some of the things that continue to happen in our greater community of Memphis. If you want to break it down into neighborhoods, that's up to you, but it's all Memphis to me.
Right.
And it's Orange Mountain is a historic place. The first truly African American built for African Americans by African Americans, subdivision or area that I believe in the country. And it is Orange Mountain is important. And if you don't care about Orange Mountain, you don't care about Memphis.
I agree. If you had to name just 2, what are your favorite all-time comfort food dishes? Either ones you love to cook or just enjoy eating?
Comfort food dishes. I have a really special place in my heart for the tuna casserole that my mom made growing up. And it's a can of tuna, a can of cream of mushroom, and some boxed macaroni and cheese. It's nothing, zero special about it on paper, but it takes me right back to being around the table with my mom. In fact, it was the first thing I cooked on my own. It was my specialty in college, right? When I first got there, like if I wanted to cook for my roommates. Oh man, comfort food that just takes me somewhere. There is nothing to me like a really perfectly seasoned bowl of grits. And I think sometimes people think they don't like grits until they've had really good grits. And it doesn't take much. I mean, when I cook grits, I have 5 ingredients in it. I have water, salt, grits, cream cheese, and butter. And that's it. Those are the only thing. But man, if you nail it, there's nothing better than it.
Sounds yummy. Tell us about your fiance, Annabeth, how you guys met and what she's meant to you in your life.
Man, I don't know if I would have gotten through the last few years without her. I really don't. She means the world to me. Her kids mean the world to me, William and Vivian. And, we met, we knew each other in what I'll call it in previous lives, as couples with other people. She came into the restaurant and was having drinks with her friends for her birthday, and I just checked on them, see how they were doing, and then maybe I might have followed up to make sure that and thank her for coming. And I asked her out, and we've been inseparable ever since. She's an amazingly strong woman. She is the best mother that I could ever imagine. She cares so much. She cares so much about so many things and so many people. And she has shown me how to be a better me, 100%.
Wow, I can see you getting a little bit emotional about it. And I'll tell you something. Yeah, it is amazing. I talk about this a lot, Kelly. The power of a moment. She came into the restaurant that night. I mean, imagine if she hadn't.
That's right. That's right.
So it happened exactly the way it was supposed to happen. Definitely.
Yeah, no doubt.
What are the most important lessons you've learned in life?
Man, well, one that my dad taught me. There's a few that my dad taught me, but the first one, the thing that I think my dad has said to me more often than not when I was growing up, I would go start telling him a story, and he would stop me, and he would say, "I want you to go get the dictionary. I want you to look up the word discretion. And I want you to read me that definition." So I'd go get the dictionary and I'd read him the definition of the word discretion. And he'd say, "Okay, do you want to continue telling me this story?" Usually I didn't.
Right. Awesome.
And this is kind of a comment on maybe where we need to go as a society a little bit. But when I was opening Iris, my dad told me, he said, "Look, you're going to go into a lot of government offices. And in every single one of them, you're going to need to get something done. And in every one of those offices, there's going to be a big glass door with gold writing on it with some guy's name on it, whose office that is." He was like, "Forget about that guy. There is a woman in charge in that office. You find her, you make sure she likes you. She's the one that decides what goes on what pile, whether you're at the top of the pile or at the bottom of the pile." Now, there's a bigger comment to be made about, the patriarchal society that we have and whatnot. But that advice has taken me a long way. And I think that no matter what job anyone has or what job they do, they deserve respect for what they do. And I can't think of a single legitimate job that people have that I don't just like fully respect what their role is and what they do.
I tell people that all the time. When I go through a drive-through, or if I'm in line checking out at the grocery store, or even at the meat department getting turkey slice, if that person has a name tag on, I specifically look at it and I call them by their name 2 or 3 times and make them feel like a person, because they are. And yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir, thank you, please. If I didn't say that when I was younger, I got the look the first time. And then I didn't do it the second time, when I got home, it was the belt or the switch. So it was ingrained in me. And I'm very thankful that my parents did that.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt.
Absolutely. I have so much more that I could talk to you about, and I know you need to get going and you have a restaurant to run tonight. I want to make sure that I thank our 2 sponsors for the show, Buckley's Grill and Sleepy's Masonry. Kelly, how could people find you and follow you online?
Well, you could look us up at our websites, and restaurantiris.com will lead you to all of them. If you want to find us on Instagram, I'm at jkellyenglish, and then I'm on Facebook, and then all of our restaurants are the restaurant name and then MEM after them on Instagram. So follow us on there. And I don't always just talk about food. I'm usually talking about music more than I'm talking about food. But love to have everyone on. And
all the hours for the restaurants are on there too.
Yep. The bar. All of our restaurants are 7 days a week, except for the Swamp Bar is closed on Monday and Tuesday. And then our location, our Fino's location in Germantown, is closed on Sundays, but everybody else is Sundays.
We have a ton of mutual friends on Facebook. Even though I just met you last year, at the restaurant with Greg, and as many people that I know that know you, I've never heard anyone say anything bad about you, and that's rare. I mean, that's in today's world, where people talk about people, that's rare. And so, when I met you those couple of times and after interviewing today, I could definitely see why. You're one of a kind. So I really appreciate you coming on the show today and taking your time.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.